Hey everybody, and welcome back to the macro. Hope everyone's having a great beginning to their week. I'm actually driving to work right now, and I got some stuff on my mind, so I was like, you know what? Let's talk about it, and hopefully the audio sounds okay. If it's not, I'll have to kind of do some editing and try and clear out some noises. But I'm still waiting for my wireless microphone to arrive in the mail, so I'm looking forward to being able to use that. It's going to be great and a total game changer. But anyway, on my drive to work this morning, I want to talk about being able to take risks. Stop playing it safe. And please keep in mind, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is probably my situation. I understand everyone's situation is different. So please keep that in mind, and anything related to money or finances. This is not financial advice. If you're looking for financial advice, seek a financial advisor. Do your own due diligence. Make your own decisions. Do your homework. But anyway, I've mentioned this in other videos in the past, but honestly, if you look around, look at the people in your life or find them on the internet. And for the people that follow that traditional path, especially here in the United States, well, right now that traditional path is still you go to school, you get good grades, you find a career that you like, well, probably while you're in university or college, right? And you do that career, and you'll probably move on to different companies, different roles, but you do that for 40 years, invest in your 401k, a lot of that time, and with the hopes of retiring when you're 65 and up. And so I think about that traditional path, and honestly, I think a lot of people that follow that path are not happy when they reach 65, or probably even before that. And I think it's because a lot of them realize that time is much more important than money. Money is important. So if you say, well, money's not that important, it doesn't matter so much, you don't need money, that's just silly. Because if you think about it, if you're going to work today, you're probably going to work out of necessity. And that just tells you right there. Most of us go to work out of necessity, not out of desire. And there's a big difference between those two, right? But anyhow, there's always money to be made. And there's so many different ways to make money now. You got to get out of this box where you just think that working a job is the only way to make money, and that's just not true. That's putting yourself in this little box that man created. It's a man-made construct. Okay, not work itself, but these little boxes that you and I get put into. There's so many different ways to make money, but time is a very finite resource, right? None of us have infinite time. Once you've spent that time, it's gone. You can't redeem that time back. There's no cash back on your time. There's not. So we all have a limited amount of time. And so when I think about kind of just giving away your best years, maybe with your spouse, with your children, with your family, for 40 years, sacrificing so much, I think that's why a lot of people aren't happy with it in the end. So we gotta learn how to take risk. And when I'm talking about risk, I'm talking about calculated risk too. If your idea of taking a risk is playing the lottery for years and years with the hopes of winning the jackpot, I think you're fooling yourself. It's quite naive. And I gotta come on and say, guys, but here's the thing, the lottery preys on the hopes and dreams of the working poor. Let me say it again. The lottery preys on the hopes and dreams of the working poor. That's just the facts. So that's not the type of risk that I'm talking about. And there's different risks you can take depending on which area of your life that you want to improve. And listen, when it comes to money, you have to understand that just playing it safe, it's really not going to get you anywhere. If working hard was simply enough, then the people that do some of the hardest jobs, that deal with some of the toughest environments, would do quite well. And that's just not true. You got to be able to take risk. And you got to be able to understand your why too. Like the why for me is my family. That's an external, that's outside of myself. So it's the reason for what I do. You understand? It's important to know what your why is because if your why is maybe just simply you, you're probably not going to stick with it for a long time, whatever risk that you want to take. And just going back real quick, um, when it comes to your finances, please understand that the level of inflation that we've seen over the last couple of years, that eventually we're going to get to a time where it's going to come back. And I got to call this out because I remember hearing this a lot during the pandemic, but all the people that thought that the government handing you money, whether it was because you were on unemployment or from the stimulus checks, a lot of people were walking around saying that it was free money. Oh no, that was not free money, my friend. You were duped. You've been fooled. We paid so much back and all of that money printing. Now, part of the reason for the levels of inflation that we saw isn't just because of the stimulus checks and the money printing. I mean, that has a big part to play with it because now you had a situation where they were injecting money right into the consumer. And now you have money, right, that's essentially not earned by that individual being chased for goods and services. But the real thing that really did it to us was the breakdown of the supply chain. When the ports had to shut down, when trucking had to shut down, right? And this was on a global scale, right? You remember, it wasn't just the United States. That caused a supply and demand imbalance. So think about it. You had money coming in from all of these different channels, right into the consumer, right into the corporations, right into the businesses, chasing less goods and services because we had that supply chain breakdown. And that's what sparked the inflation levels that we saw over the last couple of years. So, like, knowing that, do you really think that prices for assets, especially when it comes to homes, won't go up over time? You got to put yourself in a position, especially if you're young, to be able to handle that going into the future. This isn't the last inflationary scenario that we're going to see. There'll be another time in history where something happens and the government, along with the Federal Reserve and the central banks across the world, they will have to respond, and it's probably going to have to be in a much more dramatic way. It'll happen. I'm not here to tell you when that's going to happen. No one knows, but it's going to happen again. So again, taking on risk to put yourself in a better position. And for those of us out there, for you guys who love to do New Year's resolutions, that's great. I like doing those too. But if we simply just don't execute on those and we're not willing to do something different, those things are never going to happen. It's just wishful thinking. It's just a thought in your mind. It's literally a dream, right? So you got to be willing to figure out what your risk tolerance is and how much you're willing to risk. And if you're not willing to, you're simply just going to get the same results of the people around you. Like, I know for me personally, following the traditional path doesn't seem appealing. It doesn't seem appealing at all. As someone who's well into their 30s, I'm not looking at like 65 to retire, man. Come on. I want to be able to enjoy my time here on earth, my time here with my family, my parents as they're getting older, friends, being able to make a difference in different ways. I don't want to follow that traditional path. And that's the thing with the older generation. And I don't want to call out just the older generation on this, but the baby boomers and the Gen Xers, it seems like you guys get upset when there's younger people that want to kind of challenge what the normal is because it upsets you because you spent a lot of your life following that traditional path. And I think you realize that it probably wasn't worth it. So when you see someone else doing something completely different and they're doing well, like one of the things I've heard in the past is, man, people are just getting paid to just like stay at home and be on YouTube. Yeah. And that bothers you? It doesn't matter what your feelings are about it. It's a matter of what the situation is. And you got to internalize that for yourself. Maybe you can start your own YouTube channel. I don't know. You can provide some value. And the reason why a lot of people on YouTube and social media do so well is because they are providing value, because people are listening. And I tell you what, when it comes to the news and stuff like that, when you're trying to look for information, probably like one of the worst places you can look at is going to be the mainstream propaganda ministries. Like independent media is a wonderful thing, and that's why the ratings on independent media, on the mainstream media is going down because people are starting to see through the lies and through the deception, and they're sick of it, and they're not going to watch it anymore. And good, I'm glad to see that. That shows that people are waking up, and that's awesome. But the baby boomers and Gen Xers out there, don't get upset because someone else is making it in a way that you just didn't do or that you didn't think was possible. It shouldn't upset you that someone who has a YouTube channel, no matter what it's about, does quite well. And I gotta admit, are there some silly things out there? Yeah, there are. But again, we live in an attention-based society. And when it comes to YouTube, those who get the most attention win. It doesn't matter what your feelings are about it. It really doesn't. And it's the same thing. Speaking of risk, guys, when it comes to investing, you got to get your emotions out of it when it comes to investing. And just because you have a particular opinion about something, maybe a certain asset class, it doesn't mean that the market feels that way. And that's the thing. Removing your emotions from it and determining what the market wants and how to capitalize on it. It's simply that. That's how you win. So what I'm just trying to tell you is, if you don't want to follow the traditional path, if you're looking to really make some change in your life, you gotta be willing to be the risk taker. And there's gonna be some people in your life that they love you and they mean well, but they don't understand what it's like to really take risks. And you know what, speaking of that, I would argue that all of us take risk every day. Here's just a simple one. I know not a lot of us will probably think this way, like when we leave our house or whatever. But like, you take on the risk every day when you get into your car, you're taking public transit or whatever, and you're going to work. You actually do. Because there's a chance that something could happen to you on your way to work. Therefore, you're taking a risk. Plain and simple. But there's going to be some people in your life that are going to be like, maybe you should just play a little bit more safe. Just go get that job first. Don't like really pursue that business that you're trying to do. It's a little too risky. I don't know. It doesn't seem like a good idea. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to hear those things, and that could be dangerous for you. So just be mindful of that. They mean well, but they're not willing to be risk takers like you are. Anywho, I hope everyone's having a great start to their week.